Hello everyone, welcome to the Bootcamp, our Saturday class. Uh, Today we're going to be discussing how to use React's context API and the reducer along with the state, so we can pass data to our entire application without having to pass data from component to component using property values. So that's the agenda for today. Today we have our main bootcamp team. We have Zia Khan, we have Zeeshan Hanif, and today we have a new member on our team, Mr. Mohammad joining us from Italy.
Adil, would you introduce yourself? You have been selected because of your excellent submissions, project submissions. I think your voice is mute.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. My name is Mohammad, and I am from Faisalabad in Pakistan. And I did my bachelor in electronics engineering, then master in mechatronic engineering. Now I am working as a junior Java developer that I have started in June 2019. Now, in the meantime, I am also doing PIAIC courses like IoT and AI. But I would like to do these courses just to go in the field of freelancing, just to start that. That's the shortest introduction.
Okay. And where are you living right now?
I'm living in Torino. The name of the city is Turin.
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 And yeah. Is it? I've never heard of it. Is it near Rome or where is it?
It is nearby Milan.
So you must be a big football fan.
Yeah, Juventus.
Juventus, yeah.
Yeah.
And in Italy, how is the condition, Corona situation?
Now it is getting better and better. Now the cases are on the lower side.
Okay. And how long have you been in Italy?
I came in Italy in September 2013. It is like 7 years, more or less.
Still unmarried?
Yeah.
Just joking.
Always.
Your mother. Otherwise, your mother is going to shoot me if you get married in Italy.
I am only the boy in my family.
Yes. Otherwise, Zeeshan is also wants to go to Italy, not because of any other reason. Not because of any reason, just to get married.
Okay. It is really difficult to find here.
We'll find a solution.
Inshallah.
Zeeshan can find anywhere.
Yeah. Anybody who's rich like Zeeshan, he can get married anywhere. Okay. Inshallah. Okay, let's get started. Zeeshan or Adil, who is going to start with the coding?
Whichever. Zeeshan, you want to start? You can start and then we can switch in between.
Okay.
Sure.
Zeeshan.
Okay, so let me first, should we start with the article you mentioned or?
No, we are going to start with our own theory because the article is little bit complicated. And
added multiple elements into it.
Because what they do is, the basics of learning is you learn in baby steps. You make very small things, changes. Now, Zeeshan, first I want to demonstrate if you want to pass state as it used to be from top down in the tree.
If what?
The top down.
Okay.
Top down. You take some state, you give it to the root, then you give it to the next child, and that was how you used to pass state. But this is a very cumbersome way of passing state, and people started using Redux for common state. But now the thing is built into React in the last 5-6 months, and the problem is that most of the books do not cover these latest technologies, but we have just found a book which covers these, which is Pure React. It's a very good book. And let's get started. Let's create a React project and go with it.
Let me share my screen.
Naim, you be ready. You are going to expense tracker. You are going to demonstrate your expense tracker and also explain your code to all the students.
Okay, sure.
But it will take about first 30-40 minutes of, we'll cover the basics.
Oh, okay.
I just created basic structure beforehand so that we don't have to wait for all the installation. This is starting. So first what I'm going to show is how we were using previously, how we were passing properties or state down the tree to the component. So I'll create a 2 or 3 component. They'll be child of each other, and then we need to pass the information to the child. So how we are going to pass them. First we'll show that, and then we'll move to the context API.
We have already covered use state in the last class.
Yeah, I'm just talking about transferring values to the child component, so that if we need to provide the third in a raw component, which is a grandchild, so how we were providing values before the use context or without the reducer, how we were using it.
Okay, go ahead.
So
Zeeshan, can you also make the screen a little bit, the text bigger?
yeah, it's just running, so it will display in a moment. Okay, so it's I just everything is the same. Index file app.js. It's completely old. And you can see the hello world. It's an old. What I'm going to do is I'll create a 2 component. One name parent.js. Another will be child.js. And I'll pick initial structure from the app.js. In parent.js, I'll just post everything over here, and parent.
In the meanwhile, you are coding. I'll tell all the people, Naim is the new chief ninja for the English section of the class. He is going to help you. We are going to make good money together, inshallah, with God willing. And by working extremely hard, being totally honest with our customers, and being totally honest with each other. That are our basic principles. If our customer doesn't like a product, we return the money.
Okay, so in parent, I'll add the component child.
In React, the complete application is built around components. So there are a lot of small components. Together they make a whole, but there's a tree of components. The problem is how to share data between the tree. That is the main problem.
So at this moment, I have okay. So I have to import child. Okay, so at this moment, what we can see, parent, child. Now, if we want to pass value, what I'll do is I'll create that's how we did last time. At this moment, I'm just creating it, and now I want to pass this number to child component. So we don't have any other option instead of passing it to the parent and then parent will pass it to the child. So what I'll have to do is I'll have to pass, let's say I'll create a property num equals to, and this will be passed to the parent, and the parent component has props. So parent component will pass this to child.
So you have three components right now. One is the app component, which is the root element, root component. Root app component contains parent component, and the parent components contains the child components. Therefore, there are three components.
And child component is going to use to display this value props dot num. So what I had to do is the value, the property exists in app component. Now I need to pass that property to child component, not in parent component. But we don't have child component over here. We have a parent component, and parent component has child component. So I have to pass this property to parent component, and then parent component will pass this property to child component. So this is we are talking about single property. In when we were working in a real life application, we'll have multiple properties and there will be many components, very complex UI structure. In that case, there will be a lot of value passing down the tree. So this will become complex. Should I also show the update value here?
Yeah, go ahead.
So what I'm doing is I'm creating a button in app component, not in parent component, nor in child component. Update number. And then on click. I'll do is I'll set number and I'll provide plus number, so it will just increase the number every time we take the value. So here we have set function is in parent, value we are passing in parent component, and parent component will pass this value to child component. So whenever I'll call the set number, it will update the property and it will update the whole hierarchy, all structure of the React component. So it needs to be update parent component as well as child component. So whole tree needs to be updated. That's also an important drawback of passing property through the tree.
Now, we don't want to make changes to this app. Can you publish it on the web, publish it on GitHub, and make a clone of it, and then we move forward so that everybody can have a snapshot of, or make a branch of it.
Okay, so let me push to GitHub. So we just need to create another copy of this.
Just what we do is make different branches so that everybody can have different snapshots of different states of application.
Okay, so what I can do is, for now, I just initiate the
In Git, you can have multiple branches. The main branch is called master branch, and you can have different branches for people working on, and of course you can merge branches. But that is an advanced topic. You can go to the UI and you basically see different branches.
that is being pushed. Asking my user ID and password. Okay, it's pushed now. Do we need to hand over to someone, or I just?
Just make it a branch of.
I have a branch already there.
We will continue our work in the master branch, and so that the whole code remains intact in a particular branch.
Okay, so we just need to keep the repository same. Okay.
Yeah.
I just moved to the separate branch, and
therefore, in the master branch, we will continue our work. In the state 2 branch, the initial work will be left. How many branches do we have right now?
Maybe bot have created some branches because of the error in dependency.
We have created a state
Yes, I have created another branch, state demo.
Okay, leave it there. Let's go back to the original branch.
Okay.
We continue our work in the original branch and use set context. Use context.
Done. So I'm now on original branch again.
Okay. Now let's learn how to use context hook.
So first of all, we need to understand the problem. The problem we have discussed to passing the property to the tree. What context does is context provide you the facility so that you can switch the context. You can have the context of information, and once you you provide your component a context, then the value will have context will have the value. All the component within that context will have the value. You don't need to pass those value. You just call the context, and you can access the value without passing values to the down to the tree. So you first need to create a context, and then you set up that context. So let me create the context first.
Go ahead.
Let's say I call it a value context. And what I'll do is I'll do it should be working. It's not importing. Why? Okay. I just forgot to rename it, so that's why it was not importing directly. Otherwise, system is creating a problem.
You need a new system.
Yes.
You need a wife and a new system. It makes you very happy in both cases.
Okay, so
You created a new context in a file.
yes, I created a file value.context and imported React, call the context create react.create context, and we have provided the default value which is 45, so it will be used if we don't have any other value. This is the simple context, and the context has two things: provider and consumer. So whenever you are using a context, you need to provide so that the component within that tree can access that value. And there is a consumer. If you want to use that value in some component, you need to use consumer. Because of the function component, we don't have to go through all the consumer process that we'll use it directly. But every context has two things: provider and consumer. Provider provides value to the component tree, and the consumer actually consume the value. So at this moment, what we need to do is in the app.js, what I'm going to do is I'll create value context dot provider.
This will be a wrapper thing.
Yeah, basically
That's
wrapper.
a root element. I think you have not imported it.
Yeah, it's imports directly.
Okay.
Okay, so what I did is I have provided the value provider over here. Now, in the provider, what I need to do is I need to provide value, and just for initial understanding, I'm providing the value directly. Let's say 78. I'm not using this one. I'm not using this button as well to stay, and I'm not providing this number value over here. I just provided this 78. This value it is what we are expecting our child component to access and use. So at this moment, I just provided the direct value. Otherwise, what we can do is let value equals to 81, and
Vishal, I want to ask, what's the difference between the 45 default value you gave and the value you are giving here?
basically whenever you use the provide context, so
Vishal, I can't hear you.
Seems like his screen is stopped.
I think he stopped transmitting. We will have to remove him and bring him back.
He lost his screen. Here you go.
Sorry?
Zeeshan, are you back? Are you
yes,
back?
yes, I'm here.
We lost you for a minute there. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, so what I was saying that whenever we are using a context, if we don't provide the wrapper, this value context wrapper, if we don't provide this value context wrapper, and we try to consume in a child component context, so the default value which we have provided will be available for the component where we try to consume it. So I'll show you when we will consume in the child component.
Okay, okay.
So at this moment, what I did is I created a provider and I sent the value over here. In the parent component, I don't want to use it in parent component. I will not be passing in the child component as well, so that we can understand that there is nothing. So the child component is simple. Sorry, parent component is simple. In child component, what I have to do is I will call let value or any name you want to give it, use context, and I have to provide the context I need to use. So I need to use value context. So we have a value context. So again, let me reiterate. We created the context with the React create context in a separate file. We named it a value context. In the app.js, we created the provider because context a provider and consumer. So provider, and we pass the value which we need to have all the child component of this component. So all the child of this div will have the div and its child will have this value. In child component, wherever we want to use it, we will call use context, and this is the syntax of functional component. Class component have a different syntax. We are not going over there, but use context and value, and what I'll do is I'll provide this value. 81. So let me remove the props also. Again, context, create context, app.js, provider, we provide the value 81, and then we didn't pass it in the parent didn't pass in the child component here.
It is
Let
a
me remove.
Zeeshan, it is a sort of global variable.
Yeah, it's a sort of global variable, and what happening is you are providing at this moment. We what we did is we did it at the global level. We have provided this context at the global level. So all our application component are inside this, but we can use the separate context. So we can have some context over some other components, and we can use that also. At this moment, we are not using it.
Okay.
This is how we have provided. And if now we have used context over here, if I remove this provider, then you have a 45 value. So if you forget to include the provider, then and try to access the context, so it will give you the default value if you have.
So you don't need to have a provider. Just give the default value.
But it will not available in the whole application. It will be just available for the particular component. Child component have it the default value, and this is not the context of how you are using in what you say in a tree. So if property updated in a particular component, it should be available to other component in the tree. That's not going to happen.
So then you need to have a provider.
Yes, you need to have a provider. Okay. Now what we need to do is we need to update the value. So we need to have a function so that we can update that value.
Okay, make a branch of this also.
Okay.
So the different branches, the code is there so that students can go and check it out at different states of the application.
Hmm? Okay. So let me create.
Up to now, we have mainly three branches. One is the master, one is
Yes.
state one, and other one is state two.
Yes. Okay. So now I need to update this value. So what I'm going to do is
I think why don't you go ahead and make this available to Adil, so
okay.
that
It's
Adil is
available
going.
in the code.
What is
Let
available?
me add Adil.
Sure.
Adil is going to revise both the branches.
Okay.
Then we'll move over to use state.
Okay. Adil, you have access now.
Okay. Getting the access on my email and cloning the repository. You should see my screen now.
Yes.
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay. So let's see. I'm here in my GitHub desktop. So I'm in the demo use context repository that Zeeshan has just created. Let's see here in our branches list, we have our master branch where we are maintaining our live code. And then we have these separate other branches where we have our various different states of our application. So I think we can ignore the first two here. These were created by NPM and Yarn, I think. So we'll ignore these. We'll start with the state demo branch. This was the first branch that we created. And I'll open this code in the Visual Studio Code. Right, so here's our project. We can go into the source folder and let's take a look at what we have in we start with the index.js file because this is where our application always starts from, where we render the application, and we're opening the app component. So we can skip to the app component. And here we have our app function and the app component. So let's take a look here what we're doing. What we've done here is first we've created a state where we're using the React useState hook, and we created the default value of 45, and we have stored this number of 45 into a variable called number, and we have a function called setNumber, which we use to update the state. Right, we did this in the last class as well, so just to review real quick. And here what we've done is we have passed this number to the parent component. So the parent component is a separate component we have. We have a separate JS file for it. We'll take a look at that in a second. The other thing we have here is the button that we use to update the value of the state. So we're using the set number function that we've gotten from our useState hook to increment the number by 1. Okay? So that's what's going on here. Now let's take a look at what's going on in the parent component, where we're sending this value. So whatever value we have here, we're sending it to the parent component. So by default, it's 45. So let's go here. Right. So here in the parent element, what we've done is we've passed the value from the JS component here. So we've passed a number variable to this component here. So it's available to us in the properties attribute. And what we've done is, again, we have passed this value to the child component. We're not even using this data in this parent component. But what's going on is, because we need to use this data in the child component and the origin is from the app component, we had to pass it through all these different layers. We had to use it in the app component, then we had to pass it to the parent component here, even if we're not using it, just so we can send it along to the child component again. Now we can finally access it here. So when we call the child component, again we're passing the value given from the attribute props.num. Right? This refers to our value from here.
This example tells us that previously we used to have to pass from the parent to the child to the grandchild.
Right. This is the only way that we used to be able to make the data available throughout the application. Now, now that we're in the child component here, we can actually display the value again. But note that how we've passed it along from the app component to the parent component and then to the child component. And again, if there's another child of this child component, we can call it a grandchild component. Then we would pass this value again, and it would be used there, just like this. I think this is all that we covered in this branch. So I'll close out of this folder. Let's go back. Let's switch to the other branch, the demo step 2 branch. And I'll open this branch now in VS Code. Okay, so here, let's see again. Now we're using the, we're still in the app component, so we'll have app.js. Right. Now what we've done is, we see this wrapper, the value context.provider. So this means we have added some React context. So what we need to do is look for the context file here. Here we've created the context. So what the context does is it gives us the ability to pass the data to all levels of our application, to every single component in our documentary, without having to pass the values explicitly using the properties, attributes, and as we saw in the previous branch. So here what we've done is we've created the context and we've saved that value. We've given it a default value of 45, and now we have saved it into a value context constant. Now we're using this in the app.js. So here you can see we are calling the value context.provider. So the provider is an additional attribute of this object that we can use to pass the values to make it effectively be a global variable in our application. And what it does now is we can assign the value here. So what we've done is in the value of the numerical value of this variable called value here, we've given it 81. Okay. So now in our context, the value is equal to 81. Even though initially we had set it to 45 in our context creation, we had set it to 45. But now that we have created our provider here and we have set the value to 81, we'll no longer be using the default value of 45. We'll be using this value, and this is the value that will be available to all of these objects that will be contained within it. So because this wrapper is at the very top level of the hierarchy, right after the root, now all of these components inside of it can access this value. So now within this wrapper, we have called a div, and here we have called a parent component. So in our parent component, we have a function for our parent component. We're not calling the value here anywhere. So similar to our previous example in the first branch, we saw that we didn't actually use the value in our parent component. We were actually using it in the child component. So here you don't see any mention of the value. But it's still present here. If I wanted to call it, I could call it here. But again, it's not needed here. So we've not needed to pass the value explicitly. Here we've called the child component now. So if you look at the child component, here what we've done is declared the variable and assigned the value from the value context. So this is coming from our value context wrapper. The value we've set to 81 is now being assigned into this variable here, and we can call that value and display it on the screen this way. So what we've done is we have created a way using a context to initialize the value in our main app component here, and then pass that value to the remaining components in the application without explicitly passing the values through the properties parameters, the attributes.
Very nice work, Adil. Let's, Zeeshan, move forward.
I'm going to close the folder and I'll pass it back to you, Zeeshan. You're on mute, Zeeshan.
You have to unmute your mic.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So now what we need to do is we need to also update the value. To update the value, we have previously saw in our last class, we have a use state function. So what we are going to do is, instead of providing value let value 81, we'll use this syntax as we have done. So what we'll do is, say I'll call it value. Okay, let me call it number. So I just created the user state, created the state, and as we have seen, it returns two values. In the context, at this moment, we don't need it, but as we saw previously, that if someone is using the context without using the provider, so what we need to do is we need to provide a default function also for the updater. At this moment, this function is not doing anything. We just need to keep it as it is. So it's just a default function. And in app.js, we created this. Now we are sending this value variable inside this value property. So you need to understand that actually we have two things: value 0 as the state, value 1 has the function. So both of these properties will pass over here. I guess I'm using some. Oh, I was doing some mistake. I just don't need to use them separately because we need to send both of them together. This is how we'll do. Use state value. It will return an array. First index will have the value. Second index will have the function, as we have seen previously. And this array we will pass over there in the value component. And now and wherever we want to update the value, we'll use that over here. So we have a component. Child component has this value. Over here, if we go and see the UI, it fails to compile. I just need to refresh it. Okay. So I provided the 48 value. Value is being passed over here. And then we are using the context. Now here what we need to do is, actually it should use context. I just missed one thing. Value equals to context. It should return the array, and it should be, we can access with the property. Let me add the button, then we'll see.
I don't understand why it is. How is it printing it?
Yeah, I myself, because it should be, we need to access it with the 0 index. Otherwise, it should not. We need to access it like this. Let me try this also. If it's working with the 0 as well. Just a moment.
It's an intelligent compiler. It figure out.
I guess it takes the value of the state from that array and not the actual function.
It has both, but if we are taking single value, it's just returning the value directly. Maybe. Okay. So let's see. Now what we need to do is we need to call the second element, and we need to update the value. So what I'll do is I'll call the onClick. And I will do value 1. Okay. So it's been updated. There is a warning. I'll see that later. Let me hide it from you. Okay, so it's being updated. Let's go back and see again, check again. So what we did is, in the create context, we provided the second element, the function that will be used for the update. And again, this is a default value. So whatever function we provide, it will not being used if we are using provider. In provider, what I did is I called the use state. Generally, use state returns an array. So we don't, previously what we were doing is we were calling them separate we were destructuring them in separate variable so that we can call them individually. But in this case, what we need to do is whatever the array provided by the user state, we need to pass it over to the context so that all the three component, parent, child, and whatever the component are children of this context, can have access to all these states and their updated functions. So the array will be provided over here, and this array will be available to everyone. We are not accessing into the parent component. We are directly accessing in child component, and in child component, as we saw, we call use context and provided the value context. Use context is a function of React. React provided that function. So which context it needs to use? So we need to provide the context, whatever we have created. It will return an array. The array will have 2 elements just because we have provided array over here. So now this array, and then we'll show the 0 index to display the value. And by using the index 1, so just to simplify things, let's update value equals to value 1 so that we can understand it easily. So this is update value function on index 1. I'm calling the update value plus value 0. So it will be whatever the value currently we have, it will increment over in that value, and it will update the value. So update function will be called, and this is how you can access your function or your state anywhere in the child trees and use it.
Okay, Zeeshan, why don't you go ahead and make another branch?
Okay.
Very good work.
You can create branch from the terminal also, but then in that case, to make available branch over the GitHub repository, we need to add some changes. So that's why we are creating branches directly from the GitHub. Okay, so we have step 3 also, and we are in master, so we can see if what new changes we need to add in.
Now we are going to move towards. We have limited time, so we are not going to revise this thing. We are going to move over to use reducer.
Reducer. Okay. So let me first create another child so that we separate things out. We have child 2 and parent. I'll add the so I have child 2. Okay, so now we need to use another hook, use reducer. The importance of usage of use reducer is basically generally when you use the use state does all the work, but whenever you need a complex UI state management, what use state does is it picks you have the value and you have update function. What update function will do is it will just update the value. With use reducer, what you can do is you can do multiple type of changes to particular state. So let's say, for example, you need to add a value, you need to increase a value. So you need multiple state actions on a particular state, so that you can use reducer and you have a multiple type of actions for particular state instead of just update it. So what we need to do is, first we need to create a reducer. Let's say what we are doing is we are using a reducer to increase and decrease the value. So we need to increase the value, we need to decrease the value. So we need two type of actions for particular. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'll create the number reducer. I'll create a file number reducer.js. Here, what I'll do is I'll create a function.
What's the difference between use state and use reducer?
Use, as I mentioned, use state is for the single value, and it in case of use reducer, it provides you the complete state management of your application. Use state is for a particular component. When you have a particular component and you want to manage state of that particular component, so use state is for the component individually. Reducer has the accessibility. You can use the state management in multiple components with the same value, and additionally with reducer you can add multiple type of actions with one what you say state. Let's say you have an object user. Now user has a name, age, email address. So you might need to sometime update only age. You might need to change the name. You might need to add that user into an array. You can have multiple actions. So you can do those actions with the reducer. Plus, reducer can you when you want to manage the state of whole application instead of just state of a single component. So we'll go for the reducer.
Okay.
Let me just pick the syntax of the reducer. Okay, so here what we are trying to do is we have a variable reducer. I'll name it number reducer. You can give any name. It needs to have an initial state and it has an action. What I'll do is I'll use different values so that I can understand. At this moment, I'll remove this error. Okay, the reducer is in a function. It's nothing else. It's just a function, and it's a pure function. What pure function means is it does not update or change external API, external state, external variable. It does not change the input. Every time you run the reducer, it creates a new object and it returns the new object instead of updating the existing one. It is called a pure function. So whenever you are using reducer, it is a pure function. It does not update any external variable. It does not depend on any external variable. Always you have the state. You will updating this state, so you will be receiving this state. You will receiving the action. You will not update actual state variable. You are creating plus, you are just adding plus into it, and you are returning the new state. So pure function does not update anything. It just returns the new value.
Okay. Okay. Let's move forward.
Okay, so I created the simple reducer over here in app.js. What I'll do is So I created the use reducer and I need to provide the reducer over here. Just like we call the use, let me show one more time. We call the use context and provided the context over here. Exactly like this, what we need to do is, let me, instead of using over here, let me show in direct child too. Use reducer and I need to provide reducer num. So we have a number reducer just that we have created. I might have forget to export that. Yes, I need to export that. Number reducer, child to. Number reducer, and I need an initial state, any initial state, any value. So at this moment, one more thing, we in case of context as well, we are using simple value. It does not only rely on simple value. You can provide a complex object over here. As we are learning initial, so that's why we are using the simple value. So I'll provide the what you say 52. And then okay, so what it will do is it will return an array number and we call it an state and dispatch.
What is dispatch? Just like the set state, it's a method.
Yes, but in this case you can send a message also. You can provide the other values so that you can do multiple actions on your state instead of just update or set. So you can name it anything. You can name it ABC. Nothing to worry about. It's just a function. So whatever you name it, it's a standard of calling.
It's a reference to a function.
Yes. So I'll provide a state over here because it's a value. Let us see the result. Child to numbers. Okay, child 2 and we have value 52. Now we need to update. So what we have did is in our number reducer we said if action dot type is equal to increment, we are using switch over here. It's in JavaScript syntax construct to use if else. Instead of if else we are using switch. If action dot type equals to increment, so +1. Action dot type equals to decrement, so do it -1. There can be many actions, but at this moment we are doing this. So I'll create a button. On click, as we have discussed, we need to put a function. And here,
Adil, in the meanwhile, please open the URL for the video for the expense tracker, okay, so that you can discuss what are the requirements of the project.
Here we are calling dispatch function, and we can provide what we need to do. We can provide different properties over here. So what as we have implemented the reducer, so this reducer expect whatever you are providing in second action, you need to have a property name type. You can have it anything A. So you will need to pass A. I'm using type, so I need to pass type. Type, and in that type, I need this. Increment. So for increment button, I'll send the message increment. For decrement button, I'll send the message decrement.
But you're not sending the state of the.
Yeah, at this moment, I don't need, because I'm just increasing +1, but I can send the state if I want to. I want to pass any information. Let's say, let me first show this, and then I can show you the what we can do with the value also. So it is incrementing and it's decrementing. So here's the reducer. It's a simple function that it's expecting state and action. And at this moment, action.type increment, if it's increment, state is being provided by the reducer. The reducer send the state because it's in a store. It contains all the state, whatever states you are using. The reducer has the state, all the state. And in child 2, we are using useReducer, and we pass the number reducer. useReducer is a function, is a hook, so that we can use multiple functions in functional component. So we are providing reducer, default value. It will return exactly like use state, state and the function. We can use the state and we can call a function, and function contains function accepts the object, and that object will be available in this action. So let's say, just in the last example, so that let's say I want to pass one more information, type, and another information is well equals to 67. Well equals to colon minus 34. If I'm providing these two values, so what I can do is, I have the well. What I'll do is state plus action dot well, state minus action dot well. Well, we don't have an error. Okay. So it plus 67. Deduct. It's not deducting.
You have to write plus because you are passing negative value.
Okay. Just don't need to pass the negative. I just. Okay. So you can use the any type of values. That's the power of reducer. So you can provide the message, different type of values. In use state, you have the single update function, and use state is being used for the single component. Reducer is in the state management of a whole application. So you can have the reducer in multiple components. You can, if you want to use state of a component of an application, and you want to have it on multiple component. Let's say you authenticated a user. You need a name of a user in multiple component, in a footer and in header and footer. So you can use it with the reducer, and it will provide the state. So in header and footer, what you will do is you just call the useReducer, and state will be available at both places.
Very nice. Now what we are going to do is we are going to start working on the project 1, which is expense tracker app. Expense tracker app, Adil is going to demonstrate, which is done by the customer, not a customer, but a developer on YouTube. And what Naeem is going to do is show his own solution. Right now, we don't have enough time for the coding. What will happen is in the next class, that is on our Tuesday's class, Adil is going to do the coding live, and show to all the students how he built the app. Naeem is going to first, Adil is going to write something. Naeem is going to show how he did it. And Zeeshan, you are a 10 years experienced developer. You are a senior developer. You are a CTO. You are going to be the quality check for both of them. So therefore, what we are going to do is, Adil is going to continuously demonstrate how he is doing it. Naeem has already done it. Both of them are going to show their code. And Zeeshan, you are going to criticize or give them 100 out of 100 marks or whatever you want to do.
Okay.
So therefore, in the next class, Adil, Adil, can you show what are we going to do?
Yeah, I'll show the video here on my screen.
Everybody is going to come to the class after watching this video and start making it their own application.
So let me get full screen. Can you see it? The video is small anyway. Bigger. But we'll share the link of this. I think we already have shared the link of the video.
We have shared the link.
Okay, so you can look at the entire 50-minute video to get the complete details of how they did it. But so the general idea is we want to build an expense tracker. So when we say expense tracker, we're trying to keep a record of our expenses and our income. So in this scenario, what's going on is we can start with we can start talking with the basic form. So we have a form here, and we enter some text, and in the text we give a description of what the transaction is for, and then in the amount we either give a positive value if it's a income and a negative value if it's some expense. So what should happen is this whatever transaction value we provide to the application, it should first be added or subtracted to our income or expense. And if it's a positive value, it should be added to our income amount. If it's a negative value, it should be added to our expense amount, and both should be displayed. And then we have a balance, which should be the income minus expense. So that will give you the balance of what you have currently available in your account. So this is kind of like your current account in your bank. And then the last thing they also have here is a history of all the transactions. So what you can see is there is a positive transaction where there is a $500 cash income, and it's indicated here with this green color as well. And then we also have two expenses. I guess we purchased a book to learn React and a camera to do the live live sessions like this. So you can minus those expenses. So you can see 240. This is minus 240, so that goes into our expense. And then our cash income is 500 here, so you can see it here. And then 500 minus 240 is 260, which gives you the balance. So it's a simple tracking application which tallies up your income and expenses as you add them.
This is the first project for the bootcamp. Naeem, can you show us what you built and some of your code?
Yes. Share my screen. Works better. Okay.
Everybody has to be prepared for the next class. Everybody should first watch the video prepared by a ACE developer. Then we are going to start. Adil is going to build that app live. And Naeem is going to show his continuously how he did it, two different viewpoints. And then Zeeshan is going to evaluate both of them.
Can you see my screen?
There's a question there that is it necessary to follow the same design? So
no, the idea,
your own design.
The idea is that the better the design and better the implementation, the better the marks you will get.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, Naeem. Now it's up.
Okay, what I did, let me see. Okay, first I have divided the whole application in different components. One is the header component, balance component, income expense component. Then history will be the add transaction, transaction list. Then another component will be the add new transaction. First, what I did, I made different. Can you see? Sorry. I made different folders for different components. One for balance, one for expenses, one for header, and this one I was trying to do like to put header and footer of the page, but I didn't implement yet. And the next is the transaction information, in which I have three components. All of the components are related to transaction. One is add transaction, the other transaction list. Add transaction is like this component. I can't say, like add new transaction. And the transaction list will come here, history. Like if I will add something, book. So it will create a list of transactions. So inside these folders, just for reusability, I have created different components in different folders. So first, and another thing like related to this lecture, to use context, as we have seen that what is the common thing in this application? The common thing in this application is the transaction, are the transactions. So the transactions we have in balance, in income tax, income expenses, in history, in the list, and in the add new transaction. So instead of using that transaction in each component, we will use the use context, which I have created another folder, and in that folder I have created a globe.
Very nice work. Very nice work. It's standard work.
I can't hear you.
I'm saying a very good work. So we are going to just finish off our class. In the next class, we are going to build the app in the class. Adil, it is your responsibility. Please be prepared. Sure. Otherwise, we are going to ask you to deliver pizza to me and Zeeshan's house at Zeeshan's house.
Are you sure you want pizza right now? Are you sure you want pizza?
I need to answer 2 or 3 questions the student is asking. I guess they are important.
Yeah, go ahead.
One of the question was, which is a better, Redux or context API? They are two different things. If you are using only context, you need to manage the reducer, state management, all those work which Redux provides us. In case of useReducer, you will not have that. So you need to use state management. You will be using the useReducer with the Redux, and you will combine it with the context. So context make it available to your whole application. So that's how you will be using the Redux and context API. They will be complement each other. They are not competing to each other. And the question is, what happened to the consumer? We discuss about the provider. We context a provider and consumer. So as we are using functional component, so we call the use context function. Use context function handles the consumer part itself. If we were using the class component, then we had to use the consumer. So that's why we don't need to use over here, and consumer will be available with the use context function which we have used.
Any other thing left? So let's meet on Tuesday at 10 p.m. Pakistan Standard Time, and Adil, you should be ready to provide us at least 2 pizzas per head. I don't know how he is going to deliver pizza to Naeem in Italy, but that is your problem.
I'm sure they have Pizza Hut there. But if I do it, then you guys all have to send me pizza.
Of course. Of course.
That will be the barter. So what is the use of it?
What's that? What's that?
I was saying that will be the barter. Then what's the use of asking you to send it?
You have to have a fair deal, right?
Okay. Let's meet on Tuesday at 10 p.m. Thank you, everybody. And everybody should now build an app, the expense tracker app. Thank you so much.
Take care.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.